Bonjour. A little disclaimer before I get started with this video. In this video, I'm asking for help. However, this is not me granting free license to go open season on every aspect of me and my life and give me advice that I didn't ask for. Unsolicited advice is criticism, and that's a topic for a whole other video. Please don't give me advice for therapy. I've been in all kinds of treatment and woo-woo alternative crap on and off for 24 years. I know better than anyone what I need and what works for me. And I have a treatment team. Thanks. Anyone giving me therapy or treatment advice for my disabilities will be banned. That is not the help that I'm asking for. I need Social Security disability income. I need help getting it, and in this video I'll talk about what you might be able to do to help. Without SSDI, I have no possible future. This is my only hope. It doesn't matter what magic therapy people suggest if I'm starving to death in the woods because I have no money left to put gas in my car to go get food. And finally, if you suggest the law of attraction, you will receive an almighty annotated tirade first, and then be banned. I do realize that asking for specific kinds of help in this way, it's probable that I'll hit the bystander effect where everyone thinks that someone else is going to step forward and do something. But right now, for me, this is giving it my best shot. Thank you. Here's where I'm at with applying for Social Security disability income. The hearing did not go well, as I'm sure you know if you watched my earlier videos about this. They didn't have all of the testimony. They didn't have all of the documents from the place where I've been receiving psychiatric treatment for the last 2 years. And the reason for this is that my therapist had advised me to not release therapy notes. She was afraid that the judge would single out things in her therapy notes and use them against me. But what wound up happening is none of my therapy notes from any of my therapists, so like thousands of notes over 2 years of therapy and community service team did not get released because it touched off my paranoia. You know, my advocate and her staff said they won't release the therapy notes, and I felt like I couldn't talk to them about it. But what happened was the judge took just the things from my nurse practitioners who do my medication management, so like 15-minute check-ins every few months. He cherry-picked a few of those things and then conflated them to mean things that they don't mean and assumed them to cover my whole life. But, you know, when my therapist said if they look at the notes, they might not believe you're disabled, that touches off my paranoia. So I was paranoid. I was terrified. I was terrified that if I released these notes, that would hurt my testimony and that I wouldn't get disability. But I didn't get disability. So it wasn't really a fair hearing. So my advocate says it's a good case for appeals, and I've gotten the place that's treating me for psych stuff to release all the 1,000+ therapy notes. But the appeals council takes 2 years to do this appeal thing. There's a very slim chance that it'll go through. And if it does go through, it goes through to the same damn judge. When waiting for a hearing date, if you're in dire financial need, you can often write a letter to Social Security saying, I'm in dire financial need, I'm going to run out of money, you know, so set the hearing date. And we were on the verge of doing that for me when they set the hearing date, but there is no such provision for the appeals process. The only thing that I could possibly do, which others waiting on disability have done at various stages in their process, has been to write political representatives, because political representatives can apply pressure to the system and get things sped up. It's my only option. And as I've said before, I think on here, Social Security disability income is my very last option. If not for this, then I have no other option. I cannot work for a living. This is all I got. This is my only chance. I've been selling off everything of value that I own, and I'm pretty much out. And getting rid of retirement funds, getting rid of a house, getting rid of everything. And over these years of going through this process with SSDI, because it does take years, I've been living off of my savings, what I can scrimp together. And every stage along here takes years. Years of no income. Even living homeless, even with food stamps. I live way out in the boonies. Okay, I have to have a car, which means I have to put gas in it, means I have to maintain it, means I have to register it and pay vehicle taxes. The bulk of my money goes into that car, and because if I don't have that car, I can't go get food, I can't go get meds, I can't go get treatment for anything. I would die. Can't get what I need. Can't get my basic needs met. And meanwhile, this is a miserable way to live. And the appeals council, I can't remember if I said this earlier in the video, it's really hard for me to focus. I'm in a lot of pain all the time, and this is really frustrating, but the appeals council is supposed to take 2 years. 2 years, and the only way to possibly speed it up is to write my representatives, because that's all I can do at this point. It's my only hope for survival. But the skills that I need to write my representatives, to advocate for myself, I don't have. The things that make me too disabled to work are also things that hinder my capacity to write my political representatives. A lot of people applying for disability have supportive families. I have a therapist and I have an advocate, but the advocate's job is basically to argue my case at the hearing and then argue my case for the appeal. You know, she can't do this for me, but she has said, yes, do this, it could help. Her staff has said, yes, do this, it could help. Write your representatives, it could help. And so is the medical director of the place where I get my psych care. But he added in that my most disabling condition is complex PTSD. This isn't a one-incident thing. This wasn't an on-the-job accident. This wasn't like a sudden thing. It's a very long story, and there's not really an abridged version of this. That requires even more skills of trying to write this succinctly to a political representative to give them a picture of where I'm at, why I can't work, why I need this sped up, and why I need things to go my way. And I have paranoia, pretty valid paranoia, that if I do write a convincing letter, that would be taken as a sign that I'm not too disabled to work. That if I wrote a letter and it was skillful, they would say, well, surely you could, you know, you're not disabled. Pretty much anything I do is taken as a sign that I'm not too disabled to work. Not just by individuals who meet me, but by judges, by doctors I've never met that the Social Security Administration sent all my records to, who, without ever meeting me, without ever talking to me, said, oh no, she's not disabled, and the judge gave their testimony more weight and dismissed the testimony of the people who'd been working with me, all 3 of whom came to advocate for me, to give testimony, because they weren't psychiatrists. Well, I can't afford psychiatrists. I take what I can get from state-funded free psychiatric care. I would love it if some of you out there who are watching who have any, you know, skills with advocating, with bringing awareness to things, to talking to political representatives, or, you know, getting media, getting attention put on my case. But I have this fear that if I have friends to help me, that having friends can also be construed as a sign that I'm not too disabled to work. Because these are valid fears, because they showed up in the unfavorable decision. My PTSD is complex. It's made so by prolonged isolation and physical and psychological trauma throughout my childhood and then throughout my adulthood. Among many other issues, I have upwards of 30 flashbacks a day of varying intensity and length that I can't predict, that just go off. I've learned to be able to take care of myself in spite of this, but it doesn't mean that I can hold a job on top of that. I'm increasingly easily triggered into fight or flight mode. I dissociate anytime I'm talking to anyone, anywhere, at any time. That includes my therapists. I not only don't trust anyone and can't maintain friendships or participate in in-person support groups, as I've learned the hard way many times, but consistent forced contact with others quickly deteriorates my mental state to a sense of being captive and threatened. And this is even, staying with friends. It's made so much worse when someone else dictates my time, what I'm to be doing, when and where and with whom, when I can eat, when I can go to the bathroom, and how I should look, and forcing me to have real-time conversations with other people not of my choosing, while holding over my head my very survival in the form of wages that I need in order to live on. That my first and longest employers were my parents, having me work out of our isolated home in the woods amidst the cult crap, gaslighting, and brainwashing, keeping me under financial control, intentionally or not, is entirely relevant to why I can't work for a living. My disabilities aren't something that just turned up overnight, some one-time accident or event. Admittedly, they didn't used to be quite so bad, but so many bad things have happened to me that my condition has worsened, especially as my living conditions have worsened, and my hopes for the future have been blown away by my attempts to do something, to do anything to try to survive, and meanwhile hemorrhaging money every single day that I'm alive. There's no quick fix or magic pill. I was profoundly damaged by long-term, ongoing trauma, captivity, and a number of other gruesome, nightmarish incidents from childhood on, and most particularly during my developmental years, forcing maladaptions in order to survive in an abnormal, unhealthy situation. Only for a handful of years, while my husband was alive and supporting me, did I ever feel safe. Yet at the time, I was still brainwashed and unaware of how and why I was the way I was, and what all this suffering I felt was and where it came from. At present, it takes all I have and more just to deal with living on this catastrophe curve that is my current living situation, homeless, running out of money and things to sell, terrified of anything expensive and absolutely necessary breaking, like my car, that I can't afford to fix or replace, and dealing with the day-to-day horrors of living this way. I can't even begin to address the bigger psychological picture, to metaphorically re-break and set properly my broken and badly healed metaphorical bones and heart, as well as draining the separation from decades-long neglected and festered metaphorical wounds, flaming red with metaphorical infection and pain worsened by how other people have treated my pain with metaphorical, salty, MRSA-flavored lemonade. Okay, yes, that metaphor's over the top and through the roof, but so is my pain. The point is, I'm packed to the gills with trauma. I'm malformed socially and emotionally and psychologically by the way I was raised. And importantly, I can't begin to unpack this Pandora's jar of a lifetime of this crap until my basic needs are met. Until I have safety, a safe place to work from, where I'm not constantly terrified for my survival, because my psyche and my life aren't robust enough to handle that much when I'm battling the frequent storm fronts of nervous breakdowns all year round as things that maybe other people wouldn't consider catastrophic, but which endanger my survival because I'm living at just this, hanging on to the very barest edge of survival. Take a moment with me and use your imagination, engage your imagination. Can you imagine what it's like to have lived over 85% of your life in fear for your survival, unable to think past tomorrow? Can you begin to imagine how deleterious such valid, harrowing, constant awareness and survival fear could begin to distort how you feel and think and everything in your life and your self-perception and perceptions of others as your resources for survival dwindle and options get slammed shut like doors in your face? Can you imagine living years on a level where you're desperately trying to sort out a bureaucratic mix-up or explain what the problem is to the 1,000-mile stare of the uncaring, underpaid government employee of the week just to be able to continue to get food? Can you imagine the little everyday sandpaper rubs of resentment and irritation of being surrounded by people whose lives and concerns seem increasingly alien and reflective of options and privileges and ways of life that you don't have and don't have access to, and how subtly their treatment of you and your silence reinforces the unspoken, carefully ignored inequality and ignorance between you and everyone that you know and everyone you meet? Can you imagine losing all financial and personal privacy in a bid to try to get medical care when you need it, and have to go through this process every single year, disclosing every aspect of your financial life? Can you imagine having to humiliatingly disclose the nightmares of a vividly grotesque childhood and scores of trauma and assaults since, over and over, and you're screaming indignant despair at people's neither believing nor caring, as if the pittance of Social Security disability income is something that one would go to such excruciating and humiliating lengths to obtain falsely? Can you imagine what it feels like when nothing you say or write makes a difference? And you wonder if this is all that's left, that you've survived unspeakable hells only to be condemned to this slow death and deterioration of physical and mental health as you're reduced to a withdrawn, guarded, human-animal person fully aware of being the outsider in innumerable, vulnerable ways, being a target, alone, unsupported. Can you imagine how bitter it becomes to swallow others' words of comfort and validation and, well, ignorant, unsolicited advice, but also their belief in you and what you say, simultaneously alongside swallowing the cold, unfeeling denial of those who get to decide if you live or die and suffer no consequences either way? And alongside all of this, can you imagine seeing and hearing people around you talking about getting their benefits quickly secured and think, this is it? This is my life? What the frack? Right now, my main focus is and has to be survival. As long as I'm not safe, as long as I'm living with the ongoing trauma of homelessness and the threat of not being able to survive, I can't even begin to safely address underlying issues and traumas. I'm always, rushing to take care of whatever the latest emergency is, or struggling with my therapist to try to write letters that I really honestly can't. Even if I were to have stability and safety and survival guaranteed for the rest of my life, I very much doubt that I will ever reach a point where I can work a regular job. There are things that can happen to a person from birth on for such a long time that they contribute to the development of someone who is very much unlike anyone you've ever met. A lot of people who've been through what I've been through turn around and hurt other people, sometimes very badly. My background might be also like the background of somebody who goes around abusing little kids or killing people or just psychotically going off the deep end because reality is too hard. But I don't get any credit for that. In my background, a lot of people probably just kill themselves too, but the fact that I've survived and that I'm lucid isn't good enough. It's not good enough for anybody. He expects that, like, you're either a complete and total self-destructive, violent fuck-up, or you're able to completely recover and be just like a normal person. I will never be like a normal person because I will never have had a normal, healthy, secure childhood upbringing. We know now that resilience is not built through tough love, through abuse, through hardship. Resilience is built through having adults who support you but don't smother you, who have faith in you, who validate you, who help you learn to understand who you are in this world, what you feel, what you can do. Supportive people. That's what builds resilience. It's not like there's just one little issue or snag that makes it impossible for me to work to earn a living. It's not like there's one little thing that I can do, one little thing I can change, one little concession that an employer can make in order for me to sustain gainful employment. Some of what I've felt and experienced, I'm still struggling just to name and articulate. And I'm by no means inarticulate, as you can tell. Which just goes to show that this trauma has profoundly shaped who I am and how I view myself, the world, other people, and my own experiences. I often feel livid that others with less severe psychological symptoms got SSDI, Social Security Disability Income, in 4 months. Sometimes it really is the luck of the draw. Or, as I'm told, when it gets to the hearing stage, everything depends on the judge. And it really sucks that if after the appeals council, they don't give you to another judge. Go back to the same judge. That's screwed up. I mean, we don't do that in the legal profession. If there's a mistrial, and if the mistrial is determined to, possibly have anything to do with the judge, they change everything out. I feel furious that whether or not you get benefits depends on the opinion of the judge you happen to get. And doctors whom I will never meet, who review my case file and make reports to Social Security without ever meeting me, and whose testimony is given more weight because they have medical degrees. Since I have no health care, am impoverished, am homeless, and disabled, I can't afford. The thing about writing letters to my representatives is that it requires skills that I don't have, which are, again, part of the reason I can't work. I don't trust people, with good reason given my past and what's happened when I have trusted people. I'm paranoid after this judgment about anything I ever say or do being used against me, as it was in the judge's unfavorable decision when he took isolated remarks from 15-minute med management visits out of context simply because they had nursing degrees and assumed these things that he took out to reflect my entire life, my everyday life. He focused specifically on my writing poetry and helping to moderate an online support forum, both of which he assumed I was doing every day and somehow made me fit for employment. Poetry is not a saleable job skill. Newsflash. The moderation as an unpaid volunteer, of course, I did was of a single board on a small, closed community forum along with 8 other moderators in that same board. Most of what we did was delete spam, meaning that no one person among us had to visit every day. And if we needed substantial time off for life crises as a moderator, that was fine. That's why there were 8 moderators for that same board. At most, I spent maybe an hour on there every couple of days. Even so, after a few months, not even a year, I melted down and I couldn't take it anymore. It was a year and a half before I was able to return, not as a moderator, but as a member again, a desperately struggling member of this support forum, starting over and feeling more beaten down and inadequate than before. The whole decision, all 17 pages of it, reads like the judge had a huge bias against me from the start. Maybe because I didn't break down and have a fit in the hearing, because I was more afraid of being involuntarily committed than anything else that I've ever been afraid of in my life. The judge indicated that the fact that I live independently and have never been hospitalized are signs that I'm not disabled. Living independently doesn't mean that I can hold a job on top of that. The reason I choose to squat alone in a broke-down, unheated RV with persistent mouse and mildew problems that doesn't belong to me, that sometimes doesn't have running water for long periods of time in the winter, is because I can't stand prolonged forced contact with other people, even if I'm friends with them to begin with. I live alone because of my disability, not in spite of it. And I've never been hospitalized because, first of all, I can't afford it. And second of all, but more important, it's like all of my worst nightmares rolled into one. Being locked up with people who have fallen over the edge and are psychologically unstable and having chemicals pumped into me, and my food and sleeping and waking hours controlled, having my vital signs and thoughts and emotions and weight monitored and measured and critiqued, and being treated like a malfunctioning object more than a person who wants boundaries that are respected and a lot of privacy. Because of my disability, specifically my complex PTSD, I would actually rather kill myself than surrender myself to the institutional captivity I've heard harrowing tales of from local survivors of our local facilities, in addition to worse stories of other places elsewhere. I get the irony of saying how much I want privacy and boundaries in a video I post on the internet, but a lot of this stuff I've had to confess and talk about to strangers. Here, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing it by myself without anyone dictating what I can and can't say, because talking about this is just about the only thing that I can do at this point to try to keep from imploding. I should be allowed to have an outlet for periodic self-expression and blowing off steam without that being assumed to indicate my employability. Really, who's going to pay for this? No one. I happen to think that there is a huge gap between never does anything ever and has to be spoon-fed and live with other people, and can hold a 40-hour-a-week job all year round. There's a huge gap between total not able to do anything and able to do everything and also hold a job. Crucially, no matter what skills I have or feats I pull off or things I do that you've seen me do, I can't sustain anything because my symptoms are unpredictable, overwhelming, and interact to increase exponentially and escalate very rapidly. This means that quite often no one can get in touch with me, and I only get out of bed and leave the house for therapy, medication, and food, often in a sort of dissociated, unconnected haze and terror of anyone so much as approaching me. This has gotten worse, not better. as a direct result of my financial and living situations having been on a steep, unchecked decline following the death of my husband, in spite of every effort of mine and everyone that I could possibly find whose support I qualify for in this state. My living situation and lack of income is my number one problem, that until it's solved, nothing else can ever hope to be improved, and I will continue to deteriorate. Homelessness often precipitates mental illness, even when people weren't mentally ill to begin with, because of all the things it does to a human psyche to live in this world and this society as a homeless, disregarded unperson. And it worsens mental illness in those of us unfortunate enough to become homeless as a result of not being able to sustain gainful employment or have supportive family and friend relationships because of PTSD and severe childhood trauma. And little pills don't fix the past or change who a person was raised to be, their personality, their identity, how they learned to interact with other people, what they were trained to do through classical conditioning, trained to respond to, and trained to fear. Some people who are getting disability benefits even do work a little part-time, up to a specific amount. It's in the SSDI rules. It's out there, it's true. You can actually get SSDI and also work a little, up to a certain amount. The point is that Social Security disability income is there for people who can't earn enough to live on, not just for people who can't get out of bed. I feel helpless. I feel angry. I feel frustrated. I feel like there's nothing I can do and that this is grossly unfair. I need support I've never had and help I've never gotten. Not even the combined efforts and testimony of everyone who has personally treated me for years made a damn dent in that judge's decision. He was missing the bulk of the evidence from my psych treatment, but even with it, I feel like he'll still pick out more and more isolated comments to make out that I'm even more capable of sustained gainful employment than before. I don't have any control over what my therapists write, and they don't know everything that I go through all day, every day, and all week, nor necessarily write down what they do here or write it down clearly. No one knows what it's like from being other than me, but nothing I say to my advocate, my judge, my therapist, my doctor, anyone makes any difference in getting me Social Security disability income. Increasingly, contact with and talking to people in real time, face-to-face or over the phone, is becoming unbearable as the difference between me and everyone else I know increases. I don't know anyone else who is facing the threat of not being able to survive because of disability and money. What drives my days and haunts my nights is not relatable to others, and all their concerns aren't relatable to me. I can't fix this, and neither can anyone else I know. I'm out of options. I know people care about me, but often lack motivation to actually do anything because their priorities are their own lives and families, understandably. Everybody's got their hands full. My therapist and advocate are doing their jobs, but their jobs don't include writing political representatives. So again, the job falls to me, the person who is least believed about my disability and living situation, and who is the least capable of communicating in a succinct and compelling manner what's going on and why this needs to speed up to a political representative who might have the power to do something. Imagine yourself in this position for a minute with me. Could you write a letter all by yourself with no family or friend support that might make the difference between life or death for you? Could you tell a bizarre, surreal life story compactly to a stranger in such a way that they would find it both believable and galvanizing them into action on your behalf? Could you do this even knowing that if the appeals council approves the appeal, the case goes back to the same damn biased judge as before. I think that being able to work for a living involves a vast array of tolerances and skills that most people who have the ability to work aren't even aware of. Since most of these things are things that I've never really had, it's hard for me to even describe them to anyone who can work, or what happened the times I tried to work and things went so wrong so fast. And if I somehow manage to articulate it, that very articulation, that very capacity to tell my problem might be used as evidence that I'm not too disabled to work. And so it goes around in circles, and my paranoia is now worse than it's ever been, with good reason. Anything that therapists have written that I've said or done to them in our private sessions, possibly misunderstood by them, will be scrutinized just as my med management nurse's notes were, for discrepancies and any little sign of the tiniest shred of any ability whatsoever, regardless of how applicable to working a full-time job every week of the year. Every part of my life is being split open like a vivisected animal, and people who don't understand how I operate or feel or think or perceive or get through my days are going to judge based on these notes, and also on the testimony of people I've never even spoken to or clapped eyes on that the judge gave more credence to than anyone who's had to see my day-to-day functioning and struggle to describe it in notes. I've met so many people on disability for mental health issues who are demonstrably more functional than me, better able to maintain social relationships and even go to face-to-face support groups, and it pisses me off when I talk about how harrowing and terrifying and disempowering these years have been for me. And then such lucky disability income recipients compare how quickly and almost effortlessly they got Social Security disability income. It feels like an invalidation of my disabilities, not necessarily by them, but by some overblown bureaucratic bullshit system. And I feel isolated and resentful from them as well, because I'm not finding in them a shared knowing of how cumulatively hard these years of limbo and financial terror and despair and struggling to survive have been for me. The humiliations and compromises when all my choices are always bad. I'd love to use my voice to advocate for others who are also oppressed intersectionally, to talk about bigger and deeper issues than my right now. But my right now is dire. I can't help or support anyone, and it's getting worse every day. People offer help to me and never deliver, or offer sympathy but have too much on their plate to give more than words or thought. I get it, I do. I really do. Believe me. But now I'm facing more than I can do because of my disabilities, and I can't afford help. Again, because of my disabilities, they mean that I have no income. I can't count on isolated acts of charity for my survival. Social Security disability is a system that exists for exactly this reason, for exactly my situation, to reliably support people like me enough to survive. Because I've learned over and over since birth the hard lesson that people are not reliable sources of basic needs support, and they don't pay the price or feel the consequences if they stop. I'm too disabled to advocate for myself, to plead my case with anyone, and too poor to afford any kind of decent psychiatric testimony, besides which the hearing is over and the rate of success for appeals is abysmal, even though my advocate says it's a very good case for the appeals council. And every stage in this process of appealing again and again is years long, maybe in the hope that I'll give up and die because I've run out of money. I can't do this. There's too much pressure. There's too much writing on these letters that I might write to political representatives. I'm too paranoid about either seeming too confident to be really disabled on psychological grounds, or just saying things wrong and blowing my chance that some politician might actually believe me and intervene on my behalf to speed up the process due to my dire financial and living situation. It keeps hitting me over and over again. What's happened to me? It was terrible when I received the decision in the mail, and every day I wake up and that still has happened. That's still reality. It reminds me a lot of ways other incredibly traumatizing, frightening, world-shattering, life-altering things that have happened to me, like the death of my husband, just getting hit in the face every morning I wake up after that, getting hit over and over again with that reality and wondering why I should bother to get up to do anything, feeling abandoned and crushed under a weight too heavy to lift. Nothing I've struggled to do makes a difference. No one in a position to grant me a future believes what I and my therapists and doctors say. I've searched in vain for more support. Even though my disability advocate is called an advocate, all that means for her is that she argues my case at the hearing and for the appeals council like a lawyer. It doesn't extend to writing letters on my behalf to representatives or intervening on my behalf in anything else, or trying to raise public awareness of a miscarriage of justice and a terribly flawed, unjust system where someone who doesn't really deserve to die is facing no future. Such activities would require resources, money, and/or abilities that I don't have. If anyone out there watching this knows someone who can help me to write letters to my political representatives, to anyone who has influence in this situation, or do anything of any other influence about my situation, or raise awareness or promote awareness of what's going on in the hopes that that might apply pressure, please share it. Please, I'm asking. Please let me know what you or others could do to help, but keep in mind that I am at the end of my rope. I am almost non-functional right now. So if your advice hinges on me doing more than I am right now, just surviving day to day, it's not gonna work. I don't have more to give. Everything sends me spinning into a black hole of despair. I have too much terror and hopelessness, and I can't weather the least little bit of anything difficult anymore. You'd be amazed how many things become difficult that weren't before, that I never even had to think of as needing energy, effort, focus, and motivation. Even talking to other people has become too fraught with potential misunderstandings or hurts through well-intentioned but insensitive words. Enormous chasms of misunderstanding between the daily life that I lead and the daily life everyone else lives. They're way, way different. It's too much of a burden for me to have to educate and sensitize and prepare someone beforehand and keep gently reminding them of those differences between us and their privilege while keeping my patience and temper in check. And I wind up with no actual benefits for taking these pains with someone. Just a drain of wasted energy. Talking often drains out what little I have to take care of me, and it doesn't do a damn thing to help me or alleviate my pain, because most of my pain is coming from this living situation, this running out of money, this terror. Anyway, I can't care enough to lie or hide anymore all the things that are wrong and have been wrong for a long time. For most people, this year, or maybe even this video, is the first year ever hearing of it, but it's not new. It's been going on for years. It's not like I'm ignorant and haven't tried everything I can and sought out people who know more than I do and asked them and picked brains of people whose job it is to help people like me and done everything that I possibly can. If I could have figured it out or fixed it with what I have available to me, by now I damn well would have. I can't care enough about the judgments and crap people will throw my way for saying all this. Hell, I've had to say this to strangers and judges and eligibility interviewers for all kinds of benefits. If I get any kind of condescension, or idiot advice, or heavy-handedness, or pity from supposedly friendly people I tell these things to, I cut them out of my life and consider it a relief to know up front that they have no business being there. I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a long time. I may not be alive next year. Not because of a disease, but because of a judge who had the power to grant me survival and instead condemned me, just as surely as if he'd sent me to death row, to wait my turn to die when the appeals and the money have run out, and I can't get food, and I can't get medicine, and I can't get care, and I can't get gas. If the waiting gets to be too much, it's not like security is monitoring my cage of a life. I don't want this life anymore. This may be the first you're hearing about it, but I've been like this for so many years, and I'm tired. I'm worn out. All the stress hormones and the years of waiting and struggling and failing. It's all been too much. It's too much. I don't want to live like this. And I'd rather die than go to an institution, a shelter, or be at the tender mercies of the well-intentioned who might promise no strings support of me. I took way too many lessons to learn what an almighty craptacular lie that is. That I alone have to pay the price if others' good intentions and purported altruism just runs out or gets yanked away. I can't rely on other people to support my life. And I shouldn't have to. This is why we have SSDI. If you're willing and able to help me find some way to fight this system, to raise awareness, to write people with political clout, or find people and organizations who can and will do that sort of thing pro bono, because I can't pay for it. I mean, really help. So please don't just tell me what to do as if I have the capacity to do more than just survive right now. Lift a finger, make an effort. If you can't, that's fine. That's fine. I bear you no ill will. And I understand having too much on your plate. Believe me, I understand. But be honest with both of us about your limitations. Because I have also learned the nasty, repeated lesson of empty offers of help when I really, really need someone to count on because I have nothing else. Such people, it's not their fate and survival at stake, so they never get around to it, and it doesn't make a difference. So please, either commit and follow through, or be honest with me about your limitations. Or just don't say anything. Trust me, I'll understand. I am in the best position to understand limitations. What I don't want is greater expectations of me than I can give, or people flaking out at me when my survival is at stake. That's unacceptable to me. This is my life. This is not a game. And after the damaging sorts of help I've experienced in my life, it is hard as hell to even ask for help ever again. Like Charlie Brown, yet again running at the football Lucy's holding with that almost smirk on her face. It's so hard to do this. It's so hard to ask for help. I'm not asking for empty promises. I'm not asking you to tell me what to do. I'm asking for your help. And this was really hard. And I know it's long and probably hard to watch. But I don't know what else to do. I'm really vulnerable. And admitting that I need help kind of sends out a signal, like a bat signal, that, vultures can come and circle. And I know that way too well. I wanted to add that if you are willing to help or know someone who can help, that I have a lot of documentation that I use to send to both my therapist and my advocate about my situation in general, and also about specifically how my symptoms and my disabilities affect my capacity for work, which might help in a letter.
I have stuff to work from, but I have a lot of documents, and it's really hard for me to tell, like, what would be useful and what wouldn't, and you know, it's just writing letters to political representatives is not something that I'm really strong with, and especially right now, I'm just really, really not doing well. So I have stuff. If you can help me, if you know some organization or some other person that you trust that can help me pro bono, please let me know. I can provide stuff that'll help a little, I hope. I don't know.
Thank you for taking the time to listen and watch. Thank you. Really. Thank you.